Namaste, good morning. This is Manish Thori, and today I have got an opportunity to introduce our respected guest Nilesh ji. I would like to share some information about him and the topic. Nilesh ji, am I audible? The person on the last can hear me well? Okay. So Nilesh ji is an author, researcher, speaker, and corporate consultant. He holds a MS in chemical engineering and an executive MBA. He has published 3 books and writes extensively on ancient Indian history. Nilesh ji helps Indians become aware of the deep antiquity of Indian civilization so that they truly comprehend, present, or defend the grand narrative of India, unlike most other Indic researchers, because he builds it through a scientific acumen and logical reasoning. He is adjunct faculty at the Institute of Advanced Sciences, Dartmouth, Massachusetts. He's going to share his knowledge and thoughts about the topic, 3 gifts and 3 insights of Hindu civilization. I'll give a quick abstract in a minute to you. Most people who study Hindu Dharma notice its distinct philosophy and its unique approach towards all other philosophical systems. Many are becoming aware of original contributions of ancient Hindu civilization to astronomy, agriculture, medicine, philosophy, and science. The ability of Hinduism to innovate, refresh itself periodically, and absorb virtuous practices of other world traditions is noticed by many academics and ordinary practitioners of Hinduism. On the other hand, if one has to describe Hinduism succinctly, the experts, academics, and ordinary practitioners of Hinduism struggle to do a decent job. This results in a varied and confusing answers. Many also struggle to comprehend the motivations behind the ancient inventions, ingenuity, and innovations of Hindu astronomers, medical practitioners, and philosophers. Is there a way to succinctly enumerate the foundational principles of Hinduism, and is there a way to explain the enormous contribution of ancient Hindu science to modern developments and their ongoing importance for the future science and technologies? So we will get all those answers from Nilesh ji today. So I would like to invite him on the dais to share his knowledge. Please welcome Nilesh.
Namaskar everyone. Can you hear me well? All fine? Okay. Thank you. Alright, I'm not going to give you all the answers. In fact, I am going to share some glimpses, a glimpse from... Okay. Okay, is this better? This is better? Okay. Yeah, all right, good. So 3 foundations and 3 gifts. So when we get to question answer session, if you want to ask me a question, I am going to...
Make it a little bit up.
Okay, thank you. So if you want to ask a question, I'm going to say, at least as a pre-qualification or requisite, you should able to say one of the 3 gifts or one of the 3 foundations that I mentioned. Okay, so pay attention, that's what I'm saying. Okay, all right, let's go to the next one. And I just say next and you can go next. Okay, what is Dharma? Many people are so curious to know Sanskrit, learn Sanskrit. I would say, this is just my experience, start with Bhagavad Gita, but also Shankaracharya's Adi Shankaracharya's writings. It may seem very complex, but actually he writes for a 6-year-old. Okay, literally he writes for a 6-year-old. Let's look at his definition. Next. Jagata sthiti karanam praninam sakshat abhyudaya nishreyasa saheturya sa dharma. In Indian astronomy or Indian mathematics, or sometime when the stuff is written, we say Ankano Vamana Gati. Some of you might have heard that. Sometimes the numbers are to be read backwards because they are given in the shloka. Sanskrit shloka, the information is given. To understand what the actual number is given, you might have to read backwards. Not always, but usually it is said Ankano Vamana Gati. In Sanskrit, now this is one of the great professor of Sanskrit. I will not mention the name because that just starts like, people throwing and making judgments. She taught me how to understand a Sanskrit sentence. So the translation is there, those of you who can understand Hindi. Just a quick 3 high point. That activity, so heturya, that intention. What is sadharma? You start backward. That is dharma, whose intention, the intention is what? Nishreyasa, ultimate good. Abhyudaya, prosperity, fulfillment. Okay, and you are going backward. Among the living entities, for the benefit of human entities, and one more thing, Jagata Sthiti Karana. So if you look at it, the dharma is that activity, that kind of mental activity, physical activity, intellectual activity that is working towards maintaining this universe, our earth, for just our limited purposes, but the whole universe in a beautiful fashion. And for what? For the prosperity of living entities, prani. It didn't say manushya, by the way. Prosperity of living entities, and also the ultimate good. Okay, now people may translate the ultimate good in different ways, moksha and so on and so forth. Okay, but that's the definition. Just remember this for a few minutes. You will see how consistent this definition is throughout the ancient Indian narratives. No difference, very consistent. This is Shankaracharya talking about what is dharma. The reason I'm mentioning it is because we struggle, If somebody asks us what is Christianity, we may be able to say it. The Bible, the New Testament, Jesus, salvation, sin, even we may be able to utter these words. On the other hand, someone says, oh, so what is Hinduism? And we just say, well, actually it's complicated, how much time do you have? And still we may not be able to do a good job. Okay, next. So let's talk about the 3 foundations of Hinduism. They come from this definition of a dharma. Now, when I came to North America, this was about 30 plus years ago, and I came to do masters in Canada, and there was my co-researcher, like he was also doing masters, a Canadian and a Christian, and he saw a copy of Bhagavad Gita on my desk in the graduate student office. Some of you can relate to that. And he said, what is that? So we got into the discussion, and he said, do you mind me telling you from Bible and you tell me from this Bhagavad Gita? I said, that's fine. But in fact, it's not necessary that I tell you from Bhagavad Gita. But the fact he offered to tell me from the Bible was a good thing, because I had made attempts to read Old Testament and New Testament, and I read pieces here and there, but usually did not go beyond Genesis, and even didn't finish Genesis. So kind of boring to me. Now, I'm not saying that in any way to call somebody like a down. In fact, they struggle the same thing. They have the same struggle with Bhagavad Gita. This is well known. Like, if you have heard the name Joseph Campbell, if you read his books, he has discussed that struggle. A Indian struggles to understand dharma, because the confusion of dharma and religion when the person reads Old Testament, New Testament, and a person from a Christian or Abrahamic background struggles to understand dharma when they read Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so that's not something new. So based on that, what you find, I'm going to show you, let's go to the next one. These are the 3 foundations. And this is something, so foundations question, okay? These are the 3 foundations. Now some people are very smart, with the smartphones they are taking photos, so they don't have to remember now, they can just, okay, here it is. Which one? I can tell you all 3. No? Okay. The first one is, we can go in any sequence, but the first one that I find most important, that distinguishes Hindu dharma from other religions, okay, I'm making a distinction, dharma and religion, is Vichar Swatantra, freedom of thought. Okay, you will find little bits here and there, but freedom of thought is our foundation. That's why we argue. That's why we try to decide when did Mahabharata war happen, and there are 130 different claims. When did Ramayana happen? It starts from 500 CE, BCE, all the way to 28 million years ago. And some people are comfortable with each of these claims. Why does that happen? Freedom of thought. It has its negatives, but freedom of thought. Okay, Vichar Swatantra. That's our foundation. So if somebody asks you, at least that's how I explain. I said, let me tell you the 3 foundations of Hinduism. Freedom of thought, which I don't think any Abrahamic religion will be able to claim. They have to follow, we'll see what it is. The next one is Niti Dharma. Now morality you will understand in every religion, even religion is there. But here by niti, I mean the absolute moral standards that do not change based on the time, place, circumstances. Their application may change. Now, what are those absolute moral standards? All of us know it. Ahimsa, satyam asteya, right? We hear that. Akama, akrodha, alobha, right? Considering all living entities like in the same fashion. Trying to do control of mana, buddhi, vaka. Those are some basic stuff that is there. And then the last one is achar saishnuta, which is endurance in conduct. Okay, we may be on the shraddha, and that's perfectly fine. Believe that we had past lives. Natveva ham jatunasam natvam neme janadipa, right? And we also have future lives. We are worried, worried in the sense, if I don't behave right now, the consequences of that do not apply to only this lifetime, they also apply for future. Okay, so that from that it may come, but the fact is endurance in conduct. That's the predominant thing, the karma yoga, and read the whole Bhagavad Gita. Ultimately, it always, just like it comes to bhakti, it also comes to karma. You have to always do it. Even tyaga, also you have to do karma. Sannyasa, you have to do karma. Vairagya, you have to do karma. Sthita prajna also does karma. You see that? Karma sannyasi also does karma. Don't make a mistake between karma and a kriya. That can be different. So these are the three foundations, okay? Achar saishnuta, endurance in conduct, vichar swatantrya, freedom of thought, and niti dharma dhrudata, that is in conviction in absolute moral values, moral standards. Those are the three foundations. Let's go next. Yeah. Then what you see is, now how are they directly connected? This is how scientific Hindu dharma is. This is not some random words thrown in, just as a three things. Vichar swatantrya has to do with finding the truth. Mundaka Upanishad says, Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma. If you want to know Atma Jnana, and therefore Paramatma Jnana, what do? Satyena labhyas, you have to find out what is the truth. And how do you find out the truth? Satyena labhyas tapasa yesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam. Tapasya, study, abhyas, upasana, and balanced attitude, objective attitude. That is what science talks about, objective attitude, samyak jnana. Okay? So with that, you see, satya has to connect with the buddhi, intellect, and there has to be a freedom of thought. If you look at the niti, that's the focus, emphasis is on the mind. Mind is the one that goes in different directions. And we need that sanyam. If we have to summarize the entire Bhagavad Gita in one word, that will be sanyam, or balance in everything. Should I do Jnana Marga or Bhakti Marga or Yoga Marga? Samyak. Do everything. Or the answer is yes. Okay? And the last one, how do you do acharan, achara samvita, acharan, conduct. Conduct of a mind, conduct of a buddhi, conduct of a sharir. Do something, acharan, implementation through sharir. Of course with mind and buddhi. Next. Okay, now the consistency that Shankaracharya gave a definition of a dharma, you're going to see it everywhere. Go to the next one. Now this is a quick summary of our ancient Indian narratives. I will not go through them. But just now, just like I explained, now what that I quoted from Shankaracharya, it comes into Shankaracharya's commentary in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, Gita Bhashya. Look at the one of the 6 darshanas, Vaisheshika. How does it define dharma? It defines dharma as what? If you remember from just 3-4 minutes ago, Yato Abhyudaya Nishreyasa Siddhi Sa Dharma. Do you see the commonalities? Abhyudaya Nishreyasa. Fulfillment, prosperity, and ultimate good. Okay? Being content. So earn as much money as you want, but whatever money you have, be content with it. And it's not limited to money, it limits to all our life achievements. Go to the next one. So I'm going to focus on this achievement part or prosperity part, not so much on a nishreyas. We had a Swamini yesterday to talk about it. Again, the consistency, I'm taking you to Ramayana, one of our itihasa, itihasa kavya. Vasishtha Rishi, we heard a lot of Vasishtha from many speakers. By the way, yesterday, what do you think of yesterday? It was a phenomenal day, right? And if you look at each of the presentation, I hope you could do it from there. What I could do sitting here is they were literally coming together. Every speakers, whatever the aspect they were covering as a pieces of jigsaw puzzle. Okay? Everyone was connecting with what the other person said. And it wasn't necessarily intentional, but I would say coincidental, but that's also the beauty. That's how these pieces come together. I took you from Shankaracharya's Bhagavad Gita commentary to Vaisheshika Siddhanta to Yoga Vasishta. We heard enough of Yoga Vasishta, and you cannot ever hear enough of it. That's how beautiful it is. Vasishta Rishi is giving advice to Rama. Rama is a prince, therefore he is going to become a king, which means what? He is going to live in a very opulent lifestyle. Okay? What is Vasishta Rishi's guidance to him? That is from Yoga Vasishta. Antastyagi bahisangi loke vichara raghava. You are a prince. You are going to walk and rule the kingdom. Okay, Samrat, Chakravarti, whatever you want to call it. So you have to enjoy. As a prince and as a king, you will enjoy lots of things. Just remember, antastyagi. Antastyagi bahisangi. Just not remain unattached inside. Outside you can enjoy. That again goes back to those three foundations. Okay, the niti. The niti is there, but acharan. So yeah, that's perfectly fine. Acharan should be appropriate for a post. If you are a king, you have to behave like a king. Okay, next. Now, what I'm going to give you is a glimpse of it. And we also have another great speaker for this afternoon. So some of the things that I'm going to show it to you related to astronomy, the phenomenal, precise, sophisticated Indian astronomy. You can ask the question. I'll introduce when the slide comes that I steal with pride from his research. Okay. Next. Okay. You can see, you can recognize me. If you don't, just wearing the same thing. Just recently, and we have few in the audience, like Shobha Swamiji is also there. She was also there at that day. Hindu Women Conference in Atlanta. Okay, so I was going there, and the reason what I always do, go next, is I always take my wife with me, just like I did this time. Okay, when I worked for General Electric, there was a women's network, and they used to invite me to speak within the company. And when I used to go, many would kind of wonder, what is he doing here? Okay, so I just say, well, Hindu Women Conference, let me take my wife with me. Go next. During the question answer session and even afterwards, somebody said, how do we get our children to read Indian text? Is that a question on mind of many of you? Okay, the answer I gave there is the same answer I'm going to give here, which is to say, if you want your children to read something, you start reading those things. Okay? Thank you. Okay? You cannot put on your Netflix, nothing wrong with the Netflix. Netflix has a lot of great stuff. And ask them, go into the room and read Bhagavad Gita. Okay? The values cannot be taught, they are caught. If you are lucky. Okay, so read a lot. I mean, if you want your children to read something. So now what happened is, so that's the answer I gave. I said, read that stuff that you want your children to read. And then one lady there, she said, well, actually I do that, Nileshji. I tried reading Rigveda. But as soon as I started reading Rigveda, I have to be very honest and please don't be offended. As if like I wrote Rigveda. No. Please don't be offended. She said, I tried to read it multiple times, but to be honest, it is maha boring. Okay? And she's right. If you don't have a context, if you don't have the background knowledge that is required to read anything, why just Rigveda? It is boring. So what I'm showing you here are 3 maha boring things, by the way. Everyone recognizes what's up there. There are many physicists and all of those guys, okay, PhDs. That's a Schrodinger's equation. Okay, Schrodinger's equation. It was a nightmare when I studied first time, Then if you on this side, these are Einstein's equation. And in between, you know what it is? It is a Richa from Rigveda. Now we feel very great about our Rigveda, the oldest text and all of that stuff, right? But how many of us understand it? Okay, is there only one meaning? Well, that's true for all 3 of them. Each one of them, depending on your level of expertise, you can draw many insights, many insights from each of these 3. I'm not going to go into that. But for example, because when I studied this many years ago, 35 plus years ago, I couldn't understand Schrodinger equation. Okay, so on the exam, like this was an inorganic chemistry and they were teaching us Schrodinger equation, I don't know why. But you know, something that I prepared myself to answer in the exam, most of you can relate to that experience, I had this written and by heart. After 35 years, I remember it. That's how Schrodinger was scary to me. In 1926, the Austrian physicist Edwin Schrodinger developed a wave mechanical equation of an atom, blah, 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 you know, something like this. But over the years afterwards, I myself got interested in quantum mechanics, okay, and then it was just a pleasure. Same thing with Einstein's equation, but I'll tell you, same thing can happen to Rigveda. The middle one, if we can focus and if we can read Nagari, Om Tvanno Asya Amate Rutakshudo Abhishaste Ravaspradi Tvanna Uti Tava Chitraya Diya Shiksha Shachishta Gatuvita. Now that is not the topic of my day, but at one level it is simply a prayer to Indra. Okay, hey Indra, give us this, give us these skills. At another level, go next please. At another level, and that's not my subject today, but I have given presentations on this at mini symposiums on education in North America, multiple places, multiple universities. That one shlok gives a Rigvedic pedagogy model for education. Aren't we struggling in education in America and India, like how the education system should be? That's a separate talk, but I'm saying just that one verse is capable of it. It's also capable of doing a prayer to Indra. And those of you who understand mantra science, I'm not an expert, but they can chant that mantra actually, and they may be able to tell you what are the benefits you might just get simply purely by chanting without even knowing the meaning. There are different layers of it that you can get the benefit from. Some of it comes from Shraddha, like placebo. People make fun of placebo. I said, why make fun? There are enough studies to say that placebo effect can be as high as or close to 30%. Have you heard that?
60% sometimes.
How many?
Sometimes 60%.
60%. Why would you give up on the 60%? I don't understand that. Okay? All right, next. Okay, but back to prosperity. I know everyone is interested in chiching, you know, where is the money? Okay, go next. Now, we don't have much records, at least in terms of the modern numbers like GDP, going back to more than 2,000 years. But fortunately for the last 2,000 years, we have the numbers, right? We have here analytical finance professors, okay, from Stanford, NRPI in the audience, okay? Go next. If you go back to 2,000 years, what do you find? India was contributing, and these are estimates by the way, India was contributing about 40% of the world GDP. Okay? And if you just extrapolate that, you know, we extrapolate all the time. It's risky, we do it all the time. Then you can see maybe more and more if you go back in antiquity. And that's not a bad extrapolation. Okay? So 40%, 2,000 years ago, 40% of GDP, world's GDP was coming from India. What was the cause of it? Okay, let's look at quick couple of them, see how that's connected to our definition of a dharma. Next. Okay, the agriculture. Before I go to the next one, quick, somebody, one or two people answer. What you learned, where did agriculture begin in the world? Whatever you studied or wherever you studied.
In India.
Africa, India, well, I mean, say Indian Hindu Dharma Conference, India. So other than India, let's say. Egypt, Levant. Yeah, absolutely, like Mesopotamia, whatever we call it. How long ago? 8,000 years ago, okay, Cambridge professor, all that good stuff, right? Okay, absolute nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And no, the reason is, see, again in science what happens? Based on information, you propose something and you're willing to change when the new information comes. I said absolute nonsense for a different reason. Even when this was proposed, the kind of research that I'm going to refer to, not in detail, already existed. Research existed for hundreds of years, at least 100 plus years in our time. I don't understand why that research was never referred to. Okay, I have again separate talks on agriculture, but let's go to the next one. Now, from the same place, Cambridge University, there is another researcher, Dorian Fuller, if some of you have heard the name, is doing very good research as far as finding out the origins of agriculture around the world. She's doing phenomenal job. Still very bad or not so good, I would say, when it comes to antiquity of it. Okay, look at where the centers of agricultures are, wherever it is highlighted. You see India there, China, entire South Asia, not to confuse with India, that's a wrong name. Just like don't use the word mythology, do not use the word South Asia for India. Okay? The word South Asia is coined to deal with the inferiority complex of Pakistanis. Okay? Do not use the word. Yeah. All right. If I can get the claps on this, I will say some things like that. Okay? Now for the dating itself. Okay? Now I'm going to show you just a couple of instances. I have like 50 papers on it, on agriculture around the world. But just to go next. This research from, what's the place here? In UP, okay? A existence of rice farming going back to 10,000 years, crudely 10,000 years. Not only just rice farming, because farming can be wild, meaning you are not farming it per se, it exists and you harvest. But this is even farming. There is the evidence of wild grain to domestic transition. Okay, the evidence for that going back to 10,000 years. Go next. Or if you go to Sri Lanka, okay, not to confuse with Ravana's Lanka, but that's a different topic. I will not go there today. Now this one is the evidence of wild farming. But what's important is this. Going back to, do you know how long? 45,000 years. Okay, it's maybe wild farming. No, they're not saying it is wild farming. There is no clear evidence of a domestication of those grains. But there is evidence for storage, processing, cooking, heating, etc. for this going back to 45,000 years. And we can only talk of evidence that we have. That's what Nyaya Darshana tells us. Pramana taschartha pratipatte. We can only talk of the evidence we have. That doesn't mean, like Raj Vedamji yesterday mentioned, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just because you don't have evidence for something, you cannot say that it doesn't exist. Nyaya Darshana says, Pramana anupapatya upapattibhyam. The evidence that you don't have, it doesn't help you to prove anything. It does not help you to disprove anything. Very, very important, very scientific. That's Nyaya Darshana. Okay, go next. Okay. Okay, everyone please fold your hands. Okay. Om Ganeshaya Namaha. Yeah. That's Ganesha's Vahan there. Okay. The domestic mouse. Now, if you think India only exported IT, wrong. India exported domestic mouse around the world. Okay. This map is not drawn by me to trick you. Okay. This is a Bonhomme paper from 2007. So how old is it? Many years old, right? What he has shown that there are multiple domesticated varieties, but they all, if you do in a genetic way, do the coalescence, go backward in time, try to find out where they originated based on the genetic signatures and what. It takes you consistently every time to India. How many of you are from UP? Okay, you should feel very proud of yourself. Okay, in India, the location goes to UP. Okay. Now, humor aside, what the domestic mouse has to do with prosperity? Anyone? Storage, very good. Which means what? It has to do with a settled civilization. It has to do with a settled agriculture. That's how it comes in contact with human beings and stays there. House mouse, domesticated mouse, house mouse. And now when you notice it has gone all over the world from India. How did it go before aeroplanes were invested besides Pushpaka? Trade, migrations. We had talked about out of India migrations and so on. Trade, multiple migrations over thousands of years. In fact, the number 20,000 is my estimate. My estimate meaning from the paper. Actually, there is no one estimate. There are estimates from like 8,000 years ago to 10,000 to 15, 20, 25, 35. Okay, and it just never stops because genetic is not a perfect science in terms of timestamp. Okay, I'll tell you what is a perfect science for a timestamp in a minute. Okay, next. So this is another evidence for India, not the only place I'm saying, but as a place for agriculture from which agriculture went around the world, just like many other places. Okay, but definitely scrap that story that agriculture came to India from Levant. Okay. Just scrap that story, okay? Now, okay, this is a great evidence. This is the evidence of domestic mouse outside India, the Indian domesticated mouse outside India going back to The left side there is a Ramayana times and going back to Mahabharata times. Okay? 14,000 years ago, 7,500 years ago, Indian domesticated mouse in these places, all the way to Syria, Israel, but frankly, if you look at it, southern France, all the way to southern France. Okay, next. But how did, now be very careful, oh, but I heard that Aryan came from outside. Nah, okay, update yourself fast. How did Arya go around? I'm deliberately using the word Arya, not Aryan. Okay, that's not what, you will not see the word Aryan anywhere in the Indian text, period. Okay, Arya. Okay, how did Arya go around? The noble folks go around. Prunvanto Vishwa Arya, civilize the whole world. Okay, on the land, but also by the sea. And immediately the argumentative Indian has to ask, but see, come on now. Agriculture maybe, you showed me the evidence. What about the sea evidence? Okay, how did we learn? Who did we learn from? Phoenicians and this and that, and story continues. Go next. Next. Now, if I was giving this lecture more than 5 years ago, I did not have this evidence. So I waited for my turn to come to Washington, D.C. Okay, this is published in 2020. Okay, Professor Ramaswamy, beautiful research on from Tamil Nadu, the coast of Tamil Nadu near Pumpuhar, those of you who know it. This tells you not only India's history of navigation or evidence for Indian history of navigation, but so much more about our history of last 20,000 years. Okay, this port P1, if you can see it, like sort of shaded gray, that was the port that was in existence until about 20,000 years ago. Say 18,000, the exact number doesn't matter. But remember, last 20,000 years, the sea levels are rising. Okay, so when they were rising and finally they flooded that first port, that was gone. People moved inland and they built P2. Do you see that? That's the P2, that circle and P2. Next. Sea kept on rising. Eventually, it submerged P2. They built P3 inside the land, the port. Okay, now something happened. Go next. Next. Okay, yeah, sorry, go back. Okay, here. Go next. Yeah, and this is the time of Mahabharata, about 7,500 years ago. Now, this chart will tell you, hey, this happened sometime between 6,000 BCE and 4,000 BCE. Depending on the dating technique, depending on the quality of evidence that is available to you, depending on the information, you may be able to sometimes give just a range. That's all you can do, and that's still very useful. I'm going to tell you when exactly this event happened, down to the year. 5525 BCE. Just check if that date falls between 6000 BC and 4000 BC or not. It happened in 5525 BCE. How can I can be so accurate? Because I have a better time stamp that I will mention in a minute. Okay, but 5525 BCE, what happened here is not a random phenomenon. This happened around the world. I have like possibly 50 plus papers. I have already given 30 plus talks with 30 different data points around the world showing 5525 BC, 5525 BC, 5525 BC. That's not a subject today. That has to do with the year when Krishna's Dwarka was flooded and destroyed. Okay, if you go to YouTube, type Nileshok, what does it say? Nileshok shorts or something like this. Okay, 13, 50, 20 minutes talks. You can listen to them. Start at the bedtime. It gives you a good night's sleep. Okay, you don't know when you went to sleep. Okay, but something else happened when the P3 was gone in 5525 BC. Next, not only that port was submerged. Next, but actually water ingressed. How many of you from Tamil Nadu here or reasonably familiar with Tamil Nadu? Okay, so from Pumpuhar, if you go inside 15 kilometers or so, there is a place called Mayuram. Or there is another big long name to that, you know. The water ingressed all the way to Mayuram, where the arrow ends. And then for the next 2000 years, Mayuram became the port. Next. And eventually water started receding. Then, go next. Then Sri Kali was a port. Next. Then further water receding. Next. Then there is another place, Nangur, that was a port. Next. And then it came down, the water came down to today's Pumpuhar, and now Pumpuhar is the shoreline. Okay, 20,000 years of navigation history, very sophisticated ports. Okay, so that's just a navigation history. Next, Okay, now immediately people will ask, the argumentative Indian. Okay, you have the boat, you have the agriculture, you have Sanskrit, shloka, fine. Where is the GPS system? Okay, now the young crowd will say, well, it's on my smartphone, right? Astronomy was the GPS. Okay, next. My co-researcher Rupa Bhatti and myself, we presented at Oxford, I think 2018 or so, at Oxford conference, just showing some of the updates from Surya Siddhanta. The one specific update we presented was from 12,000 BC. Don't fall off your chairs, guys, okay? Those who are used to 1,000 AD, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. How old is Hinduism? 5,000 years old. That's a absolutely lazy number. Get rid of it. Okay, next time you cannot answer. Somebody says, how old is your civilization? Oh, it's very old, 5,000 years. No, nonsense, that's yesterday. That's what our basically evidence shows us. We showed a 12,000 BC epoch, but many of the other epochs that you see, for example, please join me in thanking this individual who happens to be here, okay, Dr. Anil Narayananji. Okay, and I don't publish in peer-reviewed papers. Actually, I am now. Okay, that story another time. Just for a heck of it. Okay, just to tell people that, don't pull that stupidity on me. I can publish in peer-reviewed papers. It is a very inefficient process, at least that's what I find it. But everything that is I'm showing here is published by Anil Narayananji, at least his particular work, in peer-reviewed papers. Those of you who are stuck into the peer-reviewed nonsense, okay? But let's move on. So I showed in that presentation, we went up to like 14,500, about 16,000 years of antiquity updates made in Indian astronomy. But it goes further, okay? Then Rupa Bhatti found, myself and Rupa Bhatti found another epoch going back to 28,500 BC. We haven't published on it. And then she found on her own another epoch going back to 34,500 BCE. Okay? And it's just there. The evidence is there. You cannot argue with it. I mean, you can do Kavil, Jalpa, Vitanda, Hitva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati. Nyadarshan talks about it. But there is nothing to argue there. It's everything there to comprehend, to understand. Okay, go next. So that astronomy was used as a GPS system. Quickly, I mean, these graphs are there to impress you. If you have any questions, you can ask Dr. Anil Narayananji because they are from his papers. Okay. But quickly, as a high level, this is an equation of a sun in Surya Siddhanta, like to predict the position of the sun in the sky. And some of you will say, what's big deal? I can tell you, nah, it's not that easy. But predict, okay, not after seeing it. You have to tell tomorrow at 12 o'clock where exactly the sun would be. That's called equation of the sun in Surya Siddhanta. Do you know very likely when it was recalibrated or calibrated or put forward? Mahabharata times, 5500 BCE. See, that's when it gets most accurate. Okay, this is like a backward research, backward estimation where it looks most appropriate. In Greek times, and there are people who think Greek gave us astronomy. In Greek times, even that equation that was designed, recalibrated in 7,500 years ago, only 2,500 years ago, Greek times, the Indian equation of sun was twice more accurate than the makeshift Greek equation of the sun. Okay, just to give you the precise and accuracy of Indian astronomy. Go next. Have you heard of Kepler, Johannes Kepler as a name? Do you know his contribution? Elliptical orbits. Okay. When was he around? 16th, 17th century. Okay. This is Mahabharata times here, the equation of the sun. That is Ramayana times, 12,000 BC from the 12th chapter of Surya Siddhanta. Both are referring to Indian understanding, Indian comprehension, Indian knowledge of elliptical orbits. They did it in a different fashion. Here, Narayananji calls this pulsating epicycles. I mean, not he calls it, but you have to give a name to make the concept clear. Pulsating epicycles, where the epicycles contract and expand. Essentially, it is a modeling for elliptical orbit. And I'll not go into the technical detail, that will take 30 minutes by itself. That would be, again, an elliptical orbit going back to 12,000 BC, based on the seasons, where the season was noticed, where the season was slow, where it was fast. Go next. Go next. And then people ask, so I showed you something from Mahabharata, something from Ramayana, again the argumentative Indian, but how come there was nothing happening in between? Well, if you read, you will come to know. There was a lot of stuff that was happening in between. For example, the calibration of the latitudes of a nakshatra, they were calibrated sometime around say 7000 to 8000 BC. Again, that is a work of Dr. Anil Narayanan based on Surya Siddhanta. Give him a big hand there, guys. This is absolutely fascinating. Okay, you can take this on a Shraddha right now, but do read that paper. If you need to read it multiple times, do so. Okay, next. So that's how it was. I'll go a bit fast through it. I'm on the 37th minute here. Foundations of calculus. Go ahead there. Some of you may know how the Indian ja. How many of you know sine and cosine in mathematics? And some of you may not have loved it, and that's fine. Okay, that came from Indian ja to Arabic jeb, like as in pocket. Okay, and that's good that we have a mathematics major in the audience here. Okay, and from jeb to what? To sine. Okay, that also means a pocket, a purse, something to hold, and so on. This started calculus. Go next. Precise pi. When my young daughter would come home and says, "Daddy, to how many decimal places you can recite the pi value?" Okay, and I said, "Well, we use 3.14. I don't know about you. 22 divided by 7. If you studied in India, that's kind of a good number enough to go." What I want to show is Indians could do as precise as one wanted to because of this sophisticated mathematics. But they also understood the pragmatic nature of all this science and technology. I want to give both examples. Go next. This is Madhava, 14th century, giving you a formula for a pi to 11 decimal places. Now, if you read the shlok in the top, like somebody who is good in music, they can set it to some raga and sing it for hours. That's possible. But essentially what that shlok is saying is how to get the value of a pi accurate to 11 decimal places. Okay, so many times when you see a shloka, you think, oh my God, that's something religious, complicated, just do the namaskar and go away. Okay, many times it's giving information. Go next. Now look at that. Sreshtham nama varishtanam himadri veda bhavana. Okay, and you can just go on singing that shlok. It is a sign table. It is a mathematics sign table of Madhava. You can see similar sign table in Surya Siddhanta. You can see similar sign table in Aryabhatiya. Aryabhatiya goes kakka da 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 da. You can see those things. Go next. Next. But I want to show you something about the pragmatic pi. Okay. Again, we are still on the GPS system for navigation. Go next. If you go to Wikipedia and find out what is the circumference of the Earth, okay, in nautical miles. You can do that afterwards, not now. Okay, you will see 21,600. Do you know where the ingenuity behind that number comes from? It's not something they measured 21,600, like this. No. They used the ingenuity of a human limitation, okay, to figure out what should be that number. Okay, go next. So 21,600 has to do with our naked eye resolution. For angular distance, it is about 1 arc minute. Now you take 360 degrees of a circle. Okay, 1 minute into 1 degree into 160 arc second, 1 degree into 60 arc minute, forgive me. That gives you 360 times 60 is 21,600. Okay, so you just take that number, go next. So they used that number and said backwards what could be our radius for calculation. I hope I'm not taking the mysteries away from you, okay? But they will ask the question. So when you do this, of course we know the value of pi. They plug the value of pi, but they come up with a number that is the Indian celestial radius in astronomy, 3438. Now what happens? If your all maps are like that, you plug that into the formula, you make the actual observations of the star, sun position, you look at the map when you are navigating your ship, and you know exactly where you are and how far is your destination. Okay, that's our GPS system. Next, and I'm almost done. So that's the summary. In case you forgot to take a picture, before question answer, go next. Quickly, 3 gifts of Hinduism, and I'll stop. Go next. Yeah, you can complete this picture. Okay, yeah, that's good. Now, many times when I go to the conference, I mentioned the Oxford conference. When I was there, and beautifully organized conference, after like 2 presentations, 20-minute presentations, they have like 90 minutes to discuss it. How nice. Over sandwiches and chips and whatnot, you know. And so after my presentation, the one person said, and you know, typically said, well, yeah, you don't have history. Okay? And so, I mean, I can go on the tangent there, but I said, yeah, you're right. We don't have a history. We have a itihasa. Itihasa, you know. Especially Ramayana Mahabharata, these are first-person account or very authoritative, reliable second-person accounts. That's how Ramayana Mahabharata comes to us. Why does it come to us? Something from a distant past, which no other civilization can claim. No other civilization can claim, guys. So these are, I'm just saying, as our gifts you can consider. We have itihasa, or only India has a itihasa for these reasons, these three reasons. First, if you want to write something that happened in the past, what do you need to do? You need a sophisticated language that is capable, able to describe things and is stable. Now, I'm not an English expert, but if you go back like 200, 300, 400 years and try reading Shakespeare English and see how much you understand. Okay, or even 100 and 200 years ago, you know, how it is written. There was not necessarily standard format per se. Sanskrit is that such stable language with low to no drift. It's capable, it's able, and it's stable. So it can write down the instances. Precisely the reason when you read Valmiki Ramayana and with translation, if required, it feels like our neighborhood gossip or our family gossip. Same thing with the Mahabharata. Why is that? Events that happened thousands of years ago are ably represented using this language. That's number one. That's why we have a itihasa. Nobody else has a itihasa. Iti-ha-asa. This is how it happened. Now, can it have some variations? Absolutely. Can it have embellishments? Absolutely. Can it have partha-bheda? When people are copying from the Bhurjapatra, the palm leaf to another palm leaf, errors will be introduced. That happens now, right? Okay. And the last one, sorry, two more. And we need a timestamp. When did it happen? What happened? Itihasa is what? What happened? Where it happened? When did it happen? So when did it happen? I showed you just a glimpse of Indian astronomy. Very precise clock. In Indian case, astronomy is time. So they use that, and there was somebody, the wisdom tradition, the Valmikis, the Vyasas, and all their followers and disciples down to our times, like Swaminiji yesterday. Okay, that's how the wisdom tradition, even when weak sometimes, was maintained. That's how we have a itihasa. Go next. Quickly, Intel Inside, you know. So these things are there in the background, but people don't know. You know the story of Intel? Like Intel 286 processor to 386 processors. They were trying to sell 386. This is going back to 80s. And people said, do I need 386? It's like when I built my first house in Canada and the guy said, what kind of shingles do you need? You know what shingles there? And I said, do I need shingles for my house? If you don't know what it is, then you don't know what to make of it. That's the story of Intel Inside. Go next. But that is also story of India Inside. We just know Sanskrit is some great language of gods. We don't know the sophistication of it. We have heard about Indian astronomy. We don't know the sophistication of it. We know about Indian wisdom tradition, Rishi Parampara. We don't know the sophistication of it. Go next. Okay, quick illustration. We hear about the pi and Proto-Indian European, and if you have a question you can ask me, but also Konradji is somewhere there in the audience there, okay? Yeah, right there, so you can ask him. Just keep in mind, we don't necessarily agree on everything, okay? We are very good friends, we don't necessarily agree on everything. The point go next. What I want to show you here is, this is a language tree. I assert it is a defective language tree, but even for this defective language tree to work, go next. I want to show you the Intel chip. The India Intel chip is Indo-European. Why it is not African, Proto-African European, Proto-Australian European, Proto-Chinese European? Okay, go next. Same thing, next. That Indo is the inside chip, India chip. Next, same here. And the name of that India inside chip there is Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Until that came into being, yes, people had an inkling, the similarity of languages, but no science. Go next. I'm almost done, by the way. Next. Okay, Itihasa, go next. Okay, I'm almost done. Quick, Mahabharata. Now people say, oh yeah, I'm India and I care, but other people in the world, why should they bother? They should bother because as a humanity, if you want to track your history, Itihasa, whatever it is, I'm asserting that Mahabharata acts as a sheet anchor not only for Indian itihasa, Indian history, but even the world history. Okay? The longest epic of humanity, if you take Iliad Odyssey, for the young crowd here, you might be studying that. Iliad Odyssey, combine it together times 8. That is how big Mahabharata is. Next. And it happened in 55-61 BCE. Maybe I'll ask you that trick question before you ask me a question. Okay? Next. Same thing with Valmiki Ramayana. The oldest surviving text. There may be text before. But Pramana Tashyartha Pratipatte, we can only talk of the evidence we have. The oldest text, surviving text, Itihasa, is a Valmiki Ramayana. And all the evidence can take us to 12,209 BC. No other year. Okay? Of course, there are different claims. That's not what I'm saying. Yes, there are competitors. But there is no competition for 12,209 BC. That's what I'm saying. Okay? Next. And Rigveda, quickly, all I can show with my limited research is definitely it's older than 24,000 years. Okay, next. That's my quick summary of my research, on the time axis. Go next. But you don't have to stop at 24,000 years, depending on how much time, how much excitement you have. This is like about 20 researchers around the world working on this. Okay, predominantly myself, Rupa Bhatti, and many others. We are exploring the entire space going back to 75,000 years of Indian civilization on multiple fronts. 6, 7, 20 different disciplines of science, okay? Now, you clapped this time prematurely, okay? Next, please. But you don't have to stop at 75,000 Toba explosion. Why? The time is infinite, Mahakal. Okay, actually there are indicators. Some of these are speculative, which means we may be very, very wrong, could be possibly on it. We have no problem being wrong. Goes and explores back to 200,000 years plus, 2 lakhs years plus. Okay, keep in mind, as you go back in the past, the evidence gets less and less. Everyone understands that? The reliability, the accuracy, that goes down and down. But yes, you can explore. 200,000 years, 2 lakhs. Now you can clap on this one. Okay, next. Okay, just you can go quickly. These are my books on Amazon. Next, these are books in India, Subbu Publications. Next, these are the translations. Okay, in Marathi, in Hindi of different books. That's in Kannada, ready to be published, all ready to go. This is Hindi and Marathi translation of the historic Rama. Next, these are the books written on my books. Now you can clap. Okay. I would encourage you to read these books, okay? Now, some of them, actually most of them are critical of me, okay? Critic is one thing, they're critical of me. They're saying Nilesh Oak is a fraud. Don't laugh at this, they're damn serious about it when they say it, okay? I want you to read them. I want you to read them, I want you to understand it and see what it is. This is a manthan. Remember, Samudra Manthan, we had both Suras and Asuras. Okay, the poison will come out, but so is Amrut. Okay, you have to be ready for both. Okay, next. And it says, people say, don't look at Nilesh Oak. I mean, just ignore him. I tell the same thing. On that count, we both agree. The other party and me agree. But people keep on coming. Nileshji, will you please write a foreword to my book? Okay. I now suggest them many names, but I did end up writing 9 of them or so. So those books are here. Okay, next. I think that's it. Okay, next. Quick summary. So we looked at the definition of the Dharma, 3 foundations of Hinduism. This is last chance for you to take a photograph. Okay. And the 3 gifts of Hinduism. Thank you so much. Namaskar. If we have time, we can take questions or we can stop.
How much time? What is time now? 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Okay.
Do you have any book on Madhavan or Madhav?
No, I understood the question. Thank you. No, I do not have a book on the Madhav, but many others have written. Not on the Madhav, but on Indian astronomy.
He is the originator of calculus in Europe.
Correct.
So Leibniz is part from India, basically.
Okay, anyone can raise your hand? Okay, here. Please keep only for questions. Comments can be done later. Okay, and no bhashan also, please. Let's respect this podium.
Well, my name is Alka Bhatnagar. Thank you very much. Very enlightening presentation.
Keep the mic close so that everyone can hear the question.
Sure. Okay, so my question is, you showed a graph where the Chinese and the Indian GDP is very, very high going back. Do you all even collaborate with the Chinese scholars on any of this?
Okay, I mean, you could have just asked that question, and please do that, by the way. Okay, do you collaborate with Chinese scholars? Okay, that's the question to ask. That is a question, right? Fair? Okay, the answer is yes. I collaborate with Chinese scholars, but I also collaborate with Indian scholars who are working in China. How's that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir,
Thank
for
you.
the presentation. Out of all the books, right, how many years our Indian astronomy goes back? Some 45,000 years BC or something. Is there any small book or to start with, looking at it? I know many books are there, appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's a great suggestion, and I'm going to pass on that suggestion to Dr. Anil Narayananji to write a small book, okay, showing how old is Indian astronomy. Or we can write it jointly. How's that? Okay, give us a big hand. We know we might do it. Who knows? Okay.
Yeah, is that graph from Engel Medicine study about?
This is from Angus Medicine. Angus Medicine. I was going to mention it, and my grey hair and brain, I forgot. Yes.
With the Indian astronomy that you mentioned, I'm reflecting back to yesterday's presentation on cyan and Urian system and the piece between the Ionash. Is there a reference as to when did Ionash come into being and how did this cyan and Urian systems got developed in terms of Indian astronomy?
I don't have a good answer to that, but the Indian astronomy is such that it has both. Okay, it's such. Exactly when it began, possibly, the nakshatra system that we have today, what Rupa Bhatti's and my research points to is that the current nakshatra system that we have possibly began into 30,000 years ago, 28,500 BC, around that time. And since then there is a slip, right? Slip from this. Okay, thank you. If you have a time for any other question, yeah.
So, one quick question. Unfortunately, I'm not aware of all the books you have written, but here's my suggestion. If you already done it, that's fine. A short book which goes over everything that you have gone over, and if it already exists, point to it. If not, then maybe collaborate with some of the people who are here and write in this fast-paced world, if we have a small book, which you really...
Maybe even a WhatsApp message.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. No, thank you very much. I take that request or suggestion seriously. Just like I offered collaborating with Anil Narayananji, I see now the only other person remaining there is my wife there. So maybe if you are okay, you and me can write a summary of it and call it, actually I have a working title as a brief history of Hindu civilization or something like that. Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Okay, if no one is asking, I'll ask the question, sir. So we have so much knowledge, science and everything. The ultimate test of science from my point of view is to build a rocket. Why can't we build a rocket with the existing Surya Siddhanta and everything without translating into English?
Okay, just a quick comment on that. Give a translation in English.
Without translating into English.
Do what?
Build a rocket or...
Okay, but the Surya Siddhanta is being translated in English. Okay, for example, but it's not meant for building a rocket, by the way. So just because something is space, just like everything happens in India, old research, and we say NASA has also approved it. Guys, what kind of nonsense? NASA is clueless about it, what you're talking. NASA does amazing things. They haven't, but everywhere we need some kind of a support from NASA, and then everyone, oh, NASA did it. Even people talk about my research saying that has been approved by NASA. As if NASA has no other business, no? Right. But because you talked about the rocket, okay, I may also mention, I don't know how many of you know that Dr. Anil Narayanan worked for ISRO before. Okay, before he started his work. Okay, so we have a rocket scientist, here.
I am proud of all the of our science and everything, of our heritage, but I'm just saying, why can't we use that as the current science?
Very good. I'll make a quick comment. Not only me, but my co-researcher Rupa Bhatti, now I'm here in America, so it's not very easy for me to do that, and not necessarily we are experts, but and some of the things cannot be even discussed. How's that? But Indian defense establishment, putting that in a very generic way, whatever that is, ask us to come to India to military sites and teach them Indian astronomy. Okay, and do you know what is the reason? Because if the satellites are just like password sort of removed and stuff like that, before satellites came, so if you go back 100 years, 50 years, not even 100 years, people were using astronomy when they were navigating, just so that you know, before we got the GPS electronic system and satellites and whatnot. So what if the satellites are damaged or taken over control? I mean, the IT folks, you would know how that may or may not happen. Because now people are losing the technology. If the the young kids, right, or even all of us, the GPS is not there, we suddenly don't know how to drive our car. Yeah, so same issue. So actually, yes, it is useful. Now that suddenly we have got this technology, we think like this is very arcane stuff, very ancient stuff. Not really. I mean, still everything is based on that. Thank you.
Okay. The organizers told we have 5 more minutes for questions. So any questions only? Okay. My son Sathik here.
So you talked about the significance of Sanskrit in the Indian civilization. So before Sanskritam was there was the Prakrits.
Yes.
So how does the Prakrits fit into this picture?
Buckets, you said? Buckets?
Prakrits, sorry. My pronunciation is a little bit off.
Prakrit.
Okay. Yeah, so Sanskrita, literally the word means that it is synthetic, right? It's a created language, just like our computer languages, Java and C++, something like that. I'm just giving a crude analogy. So yes, the Prakrit languages always existed. I mean, call it Prakrit or multiple languages. Multiple languages existed around the world. If you go into genetics, again, the timestamp is not easy to do, and again, it's not all proven. But there is a decent research which says there was one gene called FOXP2 in human beings that possibly responsible for human speech. Now that is dated to like 200,000, 300,000, something like this. So somewhere, let's assume that's true, the language began. Then language is there. I mean, of course, animals also talk, right? Animals also have language, but let's talk of human language. So languages were there. From that, it was created. So yes, I mean, I don't know what your question is, but the Prakrit language, I mean, it's not like if Sanskrit is not there, you cannot write or communicate. You can. Okay? It just has some more limitations in comparison to Sanskrit. Like before computers, we still did the math. It's something like that. Thank you.
We have a few more minutes while the next speaker is joining. So tell your name and your question.
Thank you. I'm Murali Subrabeti. I have one question. Like, we have so much of research done, and we have seen that it is going back to hundreds of years, thousands of years, right? When will we see all this in our textbooks?
Okay, great question. Great question, also frequently asked question. And my point is, if you think, okay, I mean, I don't know if you have your smartphone has a mirror in it. If your smartphone has a mirror in it, then you should turn it on and look at yourself. When all of us not only discuss this, or thank you for asking the question, or ask these questions in some Hindu convention or some meeting, but all of us, it becomes a second word, like the way we discuss cricket or the way we discuss Bollywood, Tollywood, Hollywood movies. Okay, it's a second nature how we discuss it. We create there are many people working on it, like Raj Vedam works on, creating these textbooks. I'm working on helping folks, not myself, but creating textbooks. But these are very individual, scant effort. If you guys are not discussing, and I don't mean just you, everyone in the room, but if all the Indians are not discussing, it will not happen. Until we discuss it, as much as we discuss movies, as much as we sing songs, the movie songs, and as much as we discuss cricket or whatever the games, until that becomes the reality, textbooks will not change. Good?
Yeah, this is Vivek Chamla. I have seen your lot of YouTube videos, and I think you also mentioned earlier that there could be several meanings to one poem or
One word.
one word in Sanskrit. And I have seen you interpreting in multiple videos.
Yes.
One of the main difficulty, I would say, for beginners like me is how do you get that kind of knowledge, I don't know what you call it, that interpretation. I think it is like over the years that you gain.
Yeah.
But if one wants to gain that, what is the best way based on your experience?
Okay. Everyone understood the question? So Sanskrit word can have multiple meanings, multiple interpretations. At least I interpret. I mean, he's saying, and everyone interprets. How many of you Marathi who understand Marathi in the audience? Okay, good number. Okay. In Marathi, and somebody can help me translate. In Marathi, the saying goes. It's not a saying. It's a affirmation. You know, it's like a which says Shabdala. You know, arthacha bhar hot nahi. Shabda is there. Shabda is what it is. Okay, what is the meaning of it? I'll give you an example. It can happen as evolution. Vada. Okay, vada, as in like discussion, as it like making your scientific position, okay, methodical position. But it can be a fight. It can be an argument. You know, it can be anything. Depending on that, say Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says Vada Pravadata Aham, the Vibhuti Yoga, 10th chapter. He says among the discussion between intelligent people for the benefit of finding the truth, I am in it. Okay, so if you are listening to such a beautiful Vada, you are actually looking at Krishna. Something like this. Shankaracharya's time, he says Vada Parityajyatam, as much as possible avoid Vada. Maybe we have become more argumentative by then. If you look at Narada Bhakti Sutra, maybe different context. It says Vada Navalambya. It should be avoided at any cost. So here, they are not referring to the same Vada. That same word is Vada, it has a different meanings. Take a word yoga. Yoga is a connect. But as soon as I say yoga, immediately you start doing position 1, position 2, and so on and so forth. That is Hatha yoga, right? But there is a yoga of a different kind. Somebody is closing the eyes and sitting, and you say, what are you doing? Yoga. Oh, come on, please don't kid with me, you know. The yoga is like this. So yoga has a meanings. Something quickly, other one. For a one word, Sanskrit has many words, different words. So if you take the word water, okay, or another favorite word, woman. Do you know how many words are there? Okay, Sanskrit is totally in love with woman. 400 plus words and still it doesn't stop. Those many words for that. Okay, different aspects of them. I mean, you have seen the woman operating manual, like, you know, the humor, like it's very big and the main operating manual is very small. It's something like that. Something like that. Okay, so the meaning is to be taken in the context. We can take it offline, what you need to do. But there is no one answer. I mean, ask all the great researchers, great speakers here.
We're waiting for the next speaker yet. So we have few more minutes for the Manthan.
Yeah. I can go on until all the questions are exhausted.
Well spoken. So here's my question. If a word has so many meanings, right?
Yeah.
So, and depending on the context, but you said Sanskrit is very precise, very stable, and has been around for many years. So those seems to be arguments which are opposing each other. So how do you reconcile that?
Beautiful. Okay, guys, did you understand the question? He says one Sanskrit word has many meanings. Okay, of course, one particular word has many Sanskrit words. That's all there. That is for the same reason, by the way. Okay, for a woman, I'll just take one word, woman, and I'll tell you the answer to that. Woman, there is one word in Sanskrit called Mahila. Everyone knows that? Yes. Do you know what that means? Mahan. Mahan, नहीं कुछ bad meaning नहीं है. Mahan, okay, totally Mahan. There is another word in Sanskrit, Abala, which means what? Weak, Kamjor. Now those two different words. What is when it says Abala, weak, Kamjor? What is the context? Muscle mass maybe. Are you with me? Muscle mass, strength, That is not to say some woman you will find stronger than another man. That is possible. But on an average, general, samanya, we are talking. Mahila, when we talk of Mahila, what we have in mind? Pratnya, Sri, Vani, communication, intellect, multitasking. Okay, they are man. Men many times don't do anything, don't think anything. They just sit in a nothing box, So it depends on the context. But back to your answer. One slide that I showed, I think he's ready, right? One slide that I showed, the three things, Sanskrit, astronomy and a wisdom tradition. Time, place and context, time, place and circumstances. So just like I looked at Abala, I know in what context it is said that she is Abala. In what context she is said Mahila. Which means we need a Vyapti Jnana, which is a background knowledge to interpret that. Precisely for that reason, just knowing Sanskrit is never enough. Knowing Sanskrit is, just because somebody knows Sanskrit doesn't mean the person knows physics or quantum mechanics or astronomy. Right? That's a discipline by itself. And you can know those disciplines without knowing Sanskrit too. Okay? Thank you. I think he's ready, right? Namaskar. Thank you.
And the speaker is ready. Thank you.